Kind of a update, I guess, on my timber rattlesnake work at Natural Bridge State Resort Park. This is my master's project. No, it's not done yet, for those of you who know me. But I am actually getting there. So that's what I'll be talking about. I'm going to kind of do an overview, too, because I know not everybody knows what's going on. This isn't going forward, so I'll just... And they are protected in pretty much every state that they occur in. The only exception now is West Virginia. Kentucky's kind of, I'll go over real quick what Kentucky's done. But certainly here in Ohio they are protected, and in most of the northern states they're protected. They've been extirpated from several places where they were found historically. And probably the biggest problem is, of course, human encroachment on their habitat and habitat destruction in one form or another. Kentucky, about 3 years ago, I guess, 3 or 4 years ago. Four? All right. 3 or 4 years ago passed a law protecting all of its native wildlife. And that doesn't extend any special protection for timber rattlesnakes, but they are included, all herpetofauna is included in that law. And basically what that means is you can catch up to 5. You can keep up to 5 wild-caught individuals for your own use, but it is now illegal to buy or sell any wild-caught native animal in the state of Kentucky. So it's at least done something. It has some sort of protection now. And timber rattlesnakes are fairly sparse, and they live in a pretty particular habitat. So they can be kind of important for learning about the health of the ecosystem. And in Kentucky, I think I have more information on this, but they're not real well studied. I think I covered that in a little bit. Their natural history is fascinating. They overwinter. Most people are familiar with the idea of a rattlesnake den. They don't seem to overwinter communally in Kentucky, but in some of the more northern parts of their range they do. And I think that in the northern parts of the range there may only be 1 or 2 sites in an entire home range that is actually thermally sufficient for them to hibernate. So there may only be 1 crevice that stays warm enough throughout the entire winter for them to survive. And so of course all the snakes in that area are going to go to that one spot. Whereas in further south populations, I think it's probably more likely that there's more places that are going to be acceptable for them. So I did not see any communal den behavior at all, but I know that in the more northern part of their population that's pretty common. I did see some, I don't know, I would say interaction, but I did find a bunch of copperheads with them occasionally, so I have some pictures of that too. But they den at one site, and then they have a pretty standard annual migration. They move from the den site to foraging areas that they can be fairly close to the den or relatively far away, depending on the snake. And they'll forage basically in the same area every year. And then if it's a female, she's just going to pretty much hang out in that area until a male comes and finds her. But if it's a male, after foraging for a while in the early summer, they will go in search of females. Males do travel pretty far in order to find females, and then after breeding, the female will go to a brooding site, which is generally a rock or a log or something on an exposed slope that gets a lot of sunlight, so it's nice and warm. And the females gestate their babies there and give birth, and then they all return to the den in the fall. And there is actually quite a bit of evidence that baby timber rattlesnakes follow scent trails laid down by the adults in order to find dens in some of the more northern populations. I don't know what they do in the south, but it is, there has been evidence of them trailing each other, which is kind of interesting. And the fact that the male and the female behaviors differ throughout part of the year is kind of an obstacle in studying them, because one of the main assumptions that you have to make when you're learning about, or when you're trying to study groups of animals, especially if you're trying to get an idea of how large a population is that it's equally likely you're going to capture every individual. So it's just as likely you're going to catch individual A as individual B as individual Z. And with an animal where the males and the females behave differently, you can't make that assumption. It's easier to find female if you know where a good breeding site is than it is to find males. So something that has to be taken into consideration. And look, I knew what I was going to say. In Kentucky, my study, and then one done by the Louisville Zoo in the Bernheim Forest, which is over not too far away from Louisville, are the only two studies that are ongoing in the state of Kentucky. Neither one of us are tracking any animals at the moment, but I know they did for quite a while, and I think they plan to continue in the future some as well. I'm not positive. So it's weird because Kentucky has a very supposedly large population. Everybody thinks they're doing fine in Kentucky, but nobody's really studied them that much to find out how they're doing.
Can I
Yeah, go right ahead.
questions? This previous image,
Uh-huh.
does that animal just really grayish black? I mean, I didn't see any yellow on it. It's just a
Those are massive babies.
Ah.
And
they all come out dark.
they are pretty gray when they're born. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you know, actually, that reminds me, I should say that female rattlesnakes do tend to hang out with their babies until the first shed, which is usually a week to 10 days, and the babies and the mom all hang out together. Of course, the theory is that the mother provides some protection, or at least her presence deters predators. Then once they shed, they disperse. There's actually, I couldn't get it, but there is a cool picture of a female rattlesnake with like one baby, and then there's like sheds, kind of a star going out where all the other babies crawled away. It's kind of interesting. You wouldn't think it would be that precise, but...
That remote control, if you just hit the down arrow, you may have...
Oh, the down arrow. I think I hit the up arrow.
Down through the slides. Point at the screen, the big screen.
Oh, the big screen.
There you go.
How does that work?
I don't know.
All right, well, magic, I guess.
Hey, Kristen.
Huh.
I kind of, with the coloration of the timbers, it counts on the geographic area. Some of them will be yellow as babies. Most of the ones around us are dark brown or black.
Thanks. Jim, you have seen yellow newborn baby?
Yes. And the ones from down around Williamsburg, Kentucky.
I didn't know that. Amazing. Most of the babies that I've seen have been pretty gray. But they do change as they get older, they certainly. This is one that was actually found on the main trail up to Natural Bridge. It was about 1 foot away from the trail next to a big stump. And I'm sure many, many, many people walked by and didn't see it until one person did. My study is obviously not going to address all of these things, but I just thought I would throw this in here because it's important when you're learning about any animal to think about what you may need to do or what may need to be done in general to preserve it. And this is basically, you know, you all hear about these things all of the time, but rattlesnakes are kind of an interesting example because most people are not in love with rattlesnakes. There was one study that I learned about in conservation biology where they claimed that the rattlesnake is the most hated animal in North America. Followed, I think number 2 was the wolf. And I don't know that I believe the study because it's also said that butterflies are the most loved animal. I don't know that I buy that, but anyway, it certainly is true that when you go into a park or a camp or a school and you talk about rattlesnakes, a lot of people don't understand what could possibly be good about them. So certainly with an animal that is not well loved, education can play a really important role. Obviously they need to have somewhere to live. And in Kentucky, a lot of that comes down to mining operations as far as habitat preservation goes. And another problem is with mining, especially after the mine is done, they're supposed to restore the habitat, but in many places that simply means flattening the ground out and planting some grass, which of course is not anything like oak hickory forest that was there before they did the mining. And I don't agree with a lot of mining techniques, but I think if they did restoration that was a little bit closer, at least gave a chance for the original type of forest